Welcome to the Bank of America Arena at Heck Edmondson Pavilion on the campus of the University of Washington and the 2005 University of Washington Freshman Convocation. The Convocation is a celebration in honor of freshmen and their families, welcoming them to the campus community. This marks the 22nd such ceremony since the tradition was revived in 1984. It is not generally known that the university held convocations from the 1920s through the 1950s. Records in the university archives do not indicate when or why the earlier convocations were discontinued, but until its revival in 1984, it was at least 20 years since one had been held. Speakers for today's event include University Marshall and Associate Professor of Philosophy Ronald M. Moore, President Mark A. Emmert, Provost Phyllis M. Wise, the President of the Associated Students of the University, Lee M. Dunbar, and Mary Gates Leadership Grant recipient and scholar Gonzalo Guzman. The keynote speaker is Dr. Priti Ramamurthy, Associate Professor of Women's Studies. The title of her convocation address is Worldly Selves, Thinking Matters. Again, welcome to the 2005 University of Washington Freshman Convocation.
The 2005 University of Washington Freshman Convocation will be opened with the singing of the Star-Spangled Banner by Mr. Lincoln Johnson, accompanied by the University Wind Ensemble, conducted by Professor Timothy Saltzman of the School of Music. The audience will please rise, and you are invited to join with Mr. Johnson in the singing of our national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets reckless, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet
Welcome to Heck Edmondson Pavilion, to the Freshman Convocation. Welcome to the University of Washington. I'm Ronald Moore, the University Marshal. In my regular job, I teach in the philosophy department, but as University Marshal, I have two special ritual duties. First, I lead the academic procession and make sure the president doesn't get lost. And secondly, as you know, as you noticed, I carry the mace. Now, the mace is an ancient symbol of authority that reminds us that universities are custodians both of enduring traditions of learning and of the power that those traditions impart to those who come to learn. It is also a reminder that the learning process has not always been comfortable and easy. In the early universities in Europe, students entered into such animated discussions with their instructors that their raucous debates often spilled out of the classroom and into the nearby coffee shops and taverns. And this is why there had to be a mace. The marshal was called upon to wield the mace to subdue parties who got out of hand. Now, as you can see, the University of Washington mace is a treasured and handsome object. It is embellished with metal sculptures of the university seal and of Denny Hall, and topped with a graceful rendition of Drumheller Fountain. President Emmert has instructed me that I am not to damage it by bashing unruly students. You know, we're under a lot of pressure these days to bring the university into the 21st century, but we are not going to start using little cans of mace instead of the ritual mace, I assure you. The mace, the festival medieval gowns that we wear, and the beautiful Gothic architecture that you see gracing our campus are visible links to a grand tradition. Coming here, you are not entering into the experiences and customs of this university only. You are at the same time entering a continuous stream of accumulated learning that connects us today with the greatest accomplishments of the past, the greatest writing, the greatest music, the greatest art and science and sports and philosophy and so much more, in all times and in all cultures. It is the nature of the university to gather and preserve the best ideas mankind has hit upon, but not to preserve them as sterile exhibits in some stuffy museum of lofty thoughts. Rather, to make these ideas a solid foundation from which new ideas can spring. It is the university's way of being liberal to be conservative. We gather together all we have gained from experiment, composition, analysis, invention, and proof to free our futures by ensuring they develop out of knowledge of our pasts. So the mace and the regalia are really just symbolic reminders of the university's distinctive way of uniting where we are now with what has brought us here. The great poet T.S. Eliot put the point this way. Someone once said, a student in a class to him once said, "Well, the dead writers are remote from us precisely because we know so much more than they did." And Eliot responded, "Yes, and they are what we know." Today, we invite you, the freshman class, to join in the grand collation of ideas that unites present-day students with a historical procession of all the various disciplines in this great university and makes you part of their ongoing development. Up till now, you've been reading about science and art and history and so on. Now you will begin to be scientists and artists and historians and all the rest. We are confident that you will find this companionship of old and new exciting and personally transformative. For as Eliot again once put it, when you get right down to it, every moment is a new and shocking valuation of all we have been. Finally, let me turn to the special character of today's event. A convocation is, as those of you who recall your high school Latin may remember, a calling together. Today we call together our incoming freshmen and their families and friends so that we may celebrate with you the beginning of university education and welcome you all to membership in our campus community. Some among you are students and families who are joining us after leaving the devastation wrought by the hurricanes in the Gulf Coast. To you, we offer a special welcome and our best wishes for the safety and preservation of what you've had to leave behind. This is the 22nd such ceremony since the tradition was revived in 1984 after a 20-year hiatus. By calling all of us, students and faculty and family and friends, together in this place, we are underscoring a point of cooperation and mutual commitment. You, students, and your parents and relatives and friends are now members of the University of Washington family. Like families everywhere, we will be sharing our concerns, our affections, our aspirations, and our devotion to the project of creating a better future. We sincerely hope that these newly forged family connections will be lifelong bonds of friendship and allegiance, and we hope that you will always feel as proud and happy about us as we already feel about this outstanding incoming class. I now want to introduce the man who will preside over our ceremony today, President Mark Emmert, who just a few years ago was, like you, a raw freshman here at the University of Washington, and who has now come back to lead his alma mater in these exciting and challenging times. President Emmert.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let me, on behalf of our wonderful university and the entire academic community, formally welcome each and every one of you to this great community of scholarship. The Freshman Convocation, this event is in fact a formal transition for all of you into university life. There's been many informal transitions, from packing bags and deciding what would or would not fit into a dorm room, let alone the back of a car, the saying goodbye to high school friends, the excitement about picking classes and the orientation process. All of that was in preparation for today, because today is officially the day in which you enter a new phase of your lives. And many of you are entering this phase, not just the students. It's a day that includes some anxiety, some nervousness, some sadness in some respects, but all of that gets overwhelmed by the positive energy of excitement and enthusiasm, the joy and pride that comes with starting a new phase of your life here at the University of Washington. For the parents that are here, I have just a few tidbits of advice, having done this a handful of times in the past. First of all, I want to congratulate you, the parents. You have much to be proud of. Your sons and your daughters have achieved something quite remarkable in simply being a part of this freshman class. There were more than 17,500 young people who tried to take these seats in front of you, and these are the ones who got those seats. They're gaining admission to one of the finest universities in the country, indeed beyond that, one of the finest universities on the planet. You help get them here, be proud of their accomplishments, feel good for this moment. The second thing I want to say to parents is thank you. Thank you for entrusting us with your sons and daughters. We will do everything that we can to put every opportunity in front of them so that they have a chance to succeed. We will support them, we'll give them advice, we will nurture them, we will take care of them as best as humanly possible. They'll have to do the work, they'll have to take on the challenges, but we'll do it in an environment that's supportive, caring, and warm and friendly. And thirdly, my only serious piece of advice, just relax a little bit. It's going to be okay. They're going to be fine. They're going to come back at Christmas with a new vocabulary and new ideas, maybe a new hair color, maybe a new tattoo. That's okay. That's fine. That's part of this process too. We assure you that it will be a great experience for you as you watch them grow and stretch and develop into the young men and women that you want them to become. To the students, welcome to what I believe is the greatest moment of your life. There is, I think, a very simple way to demonstrate that it's the best moment in your life, and that's by turning to all of us that are much older than you. You don't have to raise your hands, but I want to ask you a question. If you could turn back time, what would you give to be sitting on that floor right now? I'd do it in a heartbeat to get to start that great journey all over again as a freshman at the University of Washington. It's a great, great venture. Congratulations on being here. My second piece of advice to you that you'll hear from all of us, make the most of this moment. All we can do is put opportunities in front of you, but you're the ones that have to take advantage of them. You're the ones that have to stretch yourselves. You're the ones that have to make sure that when you leave here, you don't say to yourself, I wish I'd tried a little harder. I wished I'd pushed myself just a little more. I wished I'd tried one more thing that was a little bolder than what I did. Don't do that. Leave here knowing that you gave it your all in everything you tried. And finally, you freshmen need to know that you are really, really talented, that you are very bright, that you're here because you're leaders, because you're people of great character. You're here because you are very, very good at all the things you've been asked to do so far in your life. You're going to be challenged. You're going to be frustrated. You're going to feel disappointment. You're also going to feel elation and excitement and great success. Don't ever doubt your abilities. Don't ever doubt what you can do. Take full advantage of this, the greatest moment of your life. And now, I would like to introduce all of the people that are here today to help you do that, to help you take advantage of this great moment. I'd like to introduce the platform party, and I'd like them to please rise and remain standing until I complete the list. We have a number of our members of the Board of Regents with us today. First we have, and please hold your applause until I introduce them all. Regent Sally Jewell, Chairman of the Board of Regents. Regent William H. Bill Gates. Regent Connie Proctor. Student Regent Will Rasmussen. Regent Shelley Yap. From the Faculty Senate, we have the Vice Chair of our Senate, Gail Stiegel. Our Provost, Phyllis Wise. Representing the administration and the Vice Presidents of the University, Vice President Rusty Barcelo. Executive Vice President Weldon Eyrig. Connie Kravis, Vice President. Ernest Morris, Vice President for Student Affairs. Barbara Perry, Associate Vice President. Gus Kravis, Vice Provost. Carol Nichols, Executive Assistant to the President. Norm Arkins, Executive Director of Media Relations. We also have with us on stage a number of our deans representing each of their schools and colleges. Dean David Hodge from Arts and Sciences. Dr. Ed Lazowska, the Bill and Melinda Gates Chair in Computer Science and Engineering for the College of Engineering. Dean Bruce Baer from Forest Resources. Dean Nancy Woods from the School of Nursing. Associate Dean David Acosta from the School of Medicine. Dr. Janice DeCosmo from the Assistant Dean for Undergraduate Education. And then we have our Convocation speaker, Priti Ramamurthy from Women's Studies. And from Student Government, Lee Dunbar. There's a difference in their height, you might notice. Adam Grupp, the President of the Graduate Student Association. Our Mary Gates Grant recipient, Gonzalo Guzman. Faculty medalist, Jeffrey Eaton, from our sophomore medalist this year. From the Alumni Association, our President, Chuck Blumenfeld. And University Marshal Ron Moore, whom you have already met. Please join me in welcoming this wonderful crowd of supporters of this freshman class. Thank you. And now it's my pleasure to reintroduce the tallest fellow on the stage, your student government president, ASUW President Lee Matlock Dunbar. Lee?
Thank you, President Emmert. Good afternoon, parents, family, and friends of the University of Washington. I'm particularly pleased and honored to welcome the incoming class that is here today to celebrate their new milestone. Congratulations and good luck to you. You're beginning that much talked about and much anticipated life experience known as college. You were here as I was, as our fellow Huskies were 144 years ago, when this place of learning was founded. At the time, in 1861, there must have been the same mixture of emotion and anticipation and expectation. A new beginning, however small, has a way of doing that. It is an interesting predicament. We wish to move ahead, but at the same time, look back at the comfortable niches of growth that we must leave in order to go forward. Whatever your individual path, whether high school could not end fast enough, or when you ended it, you almost had an instant nostalgia. We are all here, you are all here, confronted with the same opportunity. Soon you are going to be challenged to articulate and define yourself in new ways, all while given a host of lenses through which to view the world. The study of nature, technology, society, and our very humanity all reveal that there is still more to be learned. You will be asked to go out on a limb, and sometimes in a 300-person lecture. In these instances, you are learning what you stand for, what you believe, and where your next beginning is going to be. In and outside the classroom, this experience is going to be different for each of you, but what ultimately unites us all is we are all different from who we are when we began today. This institution is going to build, shape, and encourage us, but we can't forget what we can do for the university. Our time here is an essential breath of air in the lungs of this institution. Students have influenced this university in profound and powerful ways. Sometimes we would even do it quite literally. On campus days, students and faculty would gather together annually and clear land and make improvements to the campus. In other respects, we have our shared innovations and passions. Two students started a bookstore in 1900 for cheap supplies for class that later evolved into what you see today on the Ave. In the 1960s and 70s, student activism challenged and moved this university to establish itself as a more just, equal, and diverse institution, one that has led the country in many respects. Student influence isn't just something that you can read about, though. It's a part of this university's very life. In Olympia, there was a bill written by students to reduce textbook price. And last June, students successfully sought UW's financial divestment from the government of Sudan. And on commencement day, between Suzo Library and Mary Gates Hall, from a dream and effort of two students, a monument was dedicated that expresses the struggle of racial inequality and diversity. But it doesn't stop here. We as students must honor a tradition of UW to carry that activism and involvement to our world, a world that desperately needs you. Watching the news, I was struck, as many of you were, by the death and destruction of Hurricane Katrina. The vivid images made clear the racial and economic barriers that still exist today in our country, whether in New Orleans or elsewhere. The disaster on the Gulf Coast has taught us that our society has a lot of fixing to do, a challenge all of us must take up and always take up in hope and belief. This experience, this college experience, is not an entirely individual event. You are part of a community of those in this room, all students of UW, and those that have come before you, and those future students waiting in a grade school or high school somewhere, watching how this university confronts the problems and opportunities that have in store for us for the 21st century. In all likelihood, one of you will be speaking in my place in the near future. And at a more distant time, one of you may well be speaking in President Emmert's place. We are all part of a continuum that is Washington. It is stitched together, meeting the demands set before it, knowing the risk of failure, but believing in the potential for its greatness. Recognize this community and recognize that there is a place waiting for you that only your unique character can fill. Your time has begun. Good luck to you, and have fun.
Thank you, Lee. One of the most distinguished awards that any undergraduate can earn at the University of Washington is to be selected as a recipient of a Mary Gates Leadership Grant or designated as a Mary Gates Scholar. And your next student speaker is someone who has achieved both of those. He's a young man from Wapato, Washington, a senior in history and American ethnic studies, a young man that we are enormously proud of for his accomplishments and what he will achieve in the future. Please join me in welcoming Gonzalo Guzman. Gonzalo?
Thank you, President Emmert. Welcome and congratulations. You should be very proud. As you look forward to the upcoming year, many of you may be wondering, what does UW have in store for me? Today, I would like to share with you how the answer to that question has unfolded for me. In my first year at UW, I was baptized by fire. I did pretty well in high school. I was second in my class, and my teachers and counselors encouraged me to plan on attending the University of Washington. I wanted to be an engineer, so when I came to UW, I enrolled as a pre-engineering major. I was eager to leave my hometown for the adventure ahead. I was ready to make the most of UW and then move smoothly into my chosen career. However, I quickly realized that UW was far more difficult than I had imagined. In winter quarter, I earned a 1.8 in a class, which is almost failing. It was only my second quarter here at UW, and I couldn't even pass an entry-level class. Worst of all, I felt all alone. I missed my family and friends much more than I thought I would, and felt I had failed them and my larger Latino community. I felt I could not find anyone here to relate to about my struggle, and I felt like I did not belong at UW. I went home often and thought about leaving the University of Washington. Things got worse, of course. I was put on academic probation for 2 of my scholarships, and I would finish my first year here at the University of Washington a quarter behind. I call this period my dark age. Everything changed spring quarter. Having lost enthusiasm for my intended major, I took classes that were not requirements. This led me to History 113, the history of modern Europe. Professor Belmer loved teaching history, and it showed. In fact, his love of history unearthed my own boyhood passion for history. I loved this class. Professor Belmer inspired me to learn more. In the discussion section for this class, I was able to openly discuss how I felt and why. More and more, I was able to bring a piece of me to this class and see a piece of everyone else. Students could offer different perspectives as long as they had historical data to back it up. More and more, I was able to bring out my community in this class and see everyone else bring out their community as well. My love for this class spread to all my coursework, and I did extremely well spring quarter. I got out of academic probation and stopped calling my family and friends to tell them how much I hated the University of Washington. I also discovered that a student in my Psych 101 class was from my hometown. When I asked this student, "So, how has UW been to you?" he told me a story much like mine, one of transition, change, and of new horizons. I heard this story many times more. I was not as alone as I thought I was, and I was really looking forward to the next year. I also got involved in campus life, joining 3 student organizations and serving as an officer. More important, though, is what the University of Washington has allowed me to give back to my home community. Another history course, this time on Latinos in the Pacific Northwest, inspired me to launch a project in the Yakima Valley where I lead a team of students developing curriculum and teaching the history of Latinos in the Pacific Northwest to K through 12 students. That experience of change and challenge that binds us all in a UW community helped make this possible. Today, I am a history and American ethnic studies major. Proud to be in Seattle, but even more proud to be from Wapato in the Yakima Valley of Eastern Washington. This fall, I will apply to graduate school to study for a doctorate in education. My professional passion and goal is to help shape educational policy for our multicultural society. Thank you very much, and good luck to you all.
Thank you, Gonzalo. As you heard from our marshal, this ceremony, like nearly all academic ceremonies, has its roots in medieval history from whence modern universities emerged. And one of those other traditions that we have is we retain titles that had very different meanings long ago. If some of you were in the military, you may know that a provost marshal is in fact a jailer. In the early academic institution, the provost of the university served the same purpose. Just like the mace was used to keep students in line, the provost was there to keep students in line. Today, fast forward 300 years, 400 years, 800 years, and the provost title has a very, very different meaning. At all great universities, the provost is the chief academic officer, the academic heart and soul of the university, the colleague and leader with the deans and the faculty of all that transpires inside our classrooms and in our laboratories. This year, we hired a new provost to join us here at the University of Washington. We hired Dr. Phyllis Wise from the University of California, Davis, where she was Dean of Biological Sciences and a distinguished and nationally regarded molecular biologist. And it is my great pleasure to introduce to you your provost, Dr. Phyllis Wise. Phyllis?
It is my honor today to introduce the speaker for the 2005 convocation, but I wanted to make one personal remark, and that is that I feel like I'm a freshman as well, and I hope I can learn as fast as you do in the classroom so that we can continue to improve even more the quality of the kind of education that you'll be getting here over the next several years. But today, it's really my honor to introduce the speaker for today's convocation, and that is Dr. Priti Ramamurthy. She is a faculty member and associate professor in the Department of Women's Studies. She came here in 1997, just 8 years ago, and in 2002 received the Distinguished Teaching Award for outstanding and demanding and really truly relevant teaching. Priti has been developing courses in probably what we are most involved with now, and that is the globalization of all of our activities. She focuses her studies, her own research on gender, commodities, and agricultural change, and particularly in how the changing role of women in India impacts on the way the economics and the politics and the culture of her own country, India, and also of the world. So it is my honor to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Ramamurthy.
Thank you so much, Provost Wise. Isn't Wise a great name for a professor to have? Now, of course, if I was to be aptly named, that would probably be Professor Shorty. But on to the business of the day. Lugwitsweed Chad al University of Washington. I invite you to the University of Washington in Lushootseed, the common language of the coastal Salish peoples of the Puget Sound area, who have lived on this ground for the past 10,000 years and more. Welcome to our visiting students, especially those of you who have come to us from communities disrupted by Hurricane Katrina. Welcome to transfer students, to parents and families, and welcome to the class of 2009. I greet you in Lushootseed to remind us of the immense history that you and I are now part of. Of course, you and I are also here because of our personal histories. Some of you are the first in your family to attend college. Some have had parents and grandparents, sisters and brothers attend UW. Some of your parents may work here. And some of you are coming to college after experiencing the world as full-time workers or homemakers with families of your own. Most of you come from the Puget Sound region and the wonderful Pacific Northwest. But we are also welcoming new students from nearly every state in the Union and over 20 foreign countries. I would like to begin by congratulating you for all that you have achieved to get to this point. You worked hard at keeping those grades high, at taking those SATs, and yes, those dreaded college essays. Many of you have already achieved so much else besides, working and helping your families financially and emotionally, volunteering, and developing passions for sports, for music, for art, for film, and countless other things. I am well aware that many of you could have chosen to go to college elsewhere. But I am happy and excited that you chose to come here, and I hope we will meet your expectations. My talk today is titled, Worldly Selves, Thinking Matters. I was feeling quite pleased with myself for coming up with the title. When I reached up for my shampoo as I was taking a shower and read something on the bottle that I swear I had never seen before, just thinking, pure won't cut it. It reminded me that one of the great values of our university is the contestation of ideas about what counts as the truth, about whether knowledge is objective or political, and contests between the disciplines and interdisciplinary fields like my own of women's studies, which question too much disciplining. It also reminded me that thinking is often understood as something that comes before doing, and doing is usually given more credence. But for the next 4 years, at least for some of the time, I hope all of you will experience thinking as doing. In other words, you will recognize yourselves as intellectuals and discover that it is important, difficult, challenging, but a lot of fun to be scholarly. There may be a perception that intellectual and creative endeavors at universities are a faculty prerogative. Indeed, you will meet faculty who will be brilliant and inspiring. And yes, they would have written the books that you will read. But our faculty will be the first to tell you that our undergraduate students inspire us with their thinking and scholarship. One occasion when this becomes apparent is the undergraduate research symposium held every year in May. This year, about 700 students presented their research. The topics range from sexual reproduction in mushrooms, the mating system in Tuberia furfuracea, to optical Fisher device for diagnosis of fetal alcohol syndrome. from the racial politics of black internationalism to split ergativity in Tibeto-Burman. And, parents, listen, is there a relationship between parental perfectionism and suicidal behavior in young adults? There was a performance piece, Gravity, by a drama and business dual major, and panels on conflict and contemporary international relations, capitalism and human rights, and modern girls. Each of the students who participated had worked with a faculty mentor on a topic of interest to the student, to the faculty member, and to their discipline. That means that each had learned to ask the kind of questions that are interesting and integral to the discipline. And each knew something about the research methodology, about how to answer those questions. On display was the scientific method, which generates hypotheses which can be answered by gathering empirical evidence. So were interpretive and critical methodologies, which question whether one can stand apart from the process of producing knowledge and reflect on the relationship between researcher and researched, between power and knowledge. You can even get financial support for doing this kind of research through the very generous Mary Gates Endowment and other sources. You can also receive a research award to use our fantastic libraries. And you can win a travel award to present your research at a professional conference. UW was listed, as you have heard, among the top 20 research universities in the world by The Economist magazine a couple of weeks ago. This morning we just moved up 3 paces. Here is an opportunity for you to be part of what put us there. Another occasion I find inspiring is the annual celebration of students who have been nominated for international and national scholarships. Last year, 3 of my students were nominated for the Churchill, the Gates Cambridge, the Marshall, the Mitchell, and the Rhodes. Although I thought I knew them well, it was not until I heard all that they had done and listened to them talk about what they planned to do that I realized how they translated knowledge to wisdom, shared it, and changed not just this university, but the communities that they work closely with. While some of these communities were their own small town families, their hometowns, their peers or their departments, others were in Ghana and India, Thailand, the Czech Republic, Mexico, and Guatemala. Many of these students had traveled there on UW grants. Students don't have to go abroad to make a statement. They do it right here on this campus. Next time you are walking by Mary Gates Hall or Suzzalo, stop and visit Blocked Out, a public sculpture conceived out of the frustrations of 2 students, J.B. Gardner and Sumona Dasgupta, with diversity efforts on this campus. They not only got the money and the permission to build the sculpture, but with 18 other students of all races, ethnicities, and abilities, they struggled over what they wanted to express and how you express feelings of invisibility, underrepresentation, and being unheard. The students then designed and constructed the art in a course with a UW professor over spring quarter. Obviously, the students who were directly involved in this project found it very meaningful. But as importantly, everyone who sees it and makes it their own, everyone who talks and thinks about it, is changed as well. Or maybe not, but let's hold open that possibility. Undergrads in research, the students nominated for awards, the diversity project, are what you may think of as exceptional. Stories of how students at UW participate in the worlds of research, learning, and diverse community building. Lest you write them off and not really see the relevance to yourself, let me also tell you some untold stories. Last year, one of my students was a smart and thoughtful young man, a cadet officer in the Army ROTC. He tended to be quiet in class. Perhaps that had something to do with his being in a minority in a class with 33 women. Come presentation day, he was to talk about feminist Muslim groups in Malaysia and their interpretation and use of the Quran to promote changes in women's lives. I have rarely seen anyone so nervous. He eventually overcame his profuse sweating and stumbling to deliver a great presentation. He's probably shipped out to Iraq or Afghanistan or helping with Hurricane Katrina. I hope he is well and he is using his insights and wisdom in dealing with these calamities. To all you young men and women who think women's studies is not for you, a challenge. Take a women's studies course. You may not have faced more adversity yet. And by the way, I usually have many men in my classes, and there's always room for more. My second story is about a student, a strong and seemingly very fit young woman who spent summers hefting fish hauls up north. She did wonders with the concepts I was teaching in the course by applying them to her experiences. About 3 weeks into the quarter, she informed me that she had the human papilloma virus, an STD which is the leading cause of cervical cancer. She had at least 2 rounds of surgery that quarter, but not only took care of herself without self-pity or remorse, she completed the course with flying colors. We both found out that one of the leading researchers on the human papilloma virus is at the UW Medical Center. Other students of mine have had to deal with the unexpected and fatal illnesses of parents. To care for them, one gave up the chance to graduate with an honors degree in international studies. Another gave up her chance to travel abroad for a quarter to spend time with her father, a drug addict whom she had never really spent any time growing up with, but who reached out to her on his entering a hospice. Usually at gatherings like this, freshmen are told, you are great, you are privileged to be getting a good education. With education and privilege comes responsibility. So go out and be responsible, change the world. Change the world sometime in the future, that is, after you leave here. But the stories I told are students who are worldly selves, wise, thinking, ethical, caring, decent human beings who are changing the world now, not deferring it to the future. For them, the world is not out there, but here, made up of us, you and I. You will learn as much from students like them as from your teachers. You may be thinking, well, those were stories of overcoming personal privation. Hopefully, I can escape. So allow me one last story of how in our actions, our relations to each other, and our imaginations, we remake and experience the world all the time. Last quarter, I was teaching a class on images and how we make sense of them. I had meant to take in a photograph from the front page of the New York Times of that day, but forgot it at home. One of the students who had seen the image described it as being of a man, a US soldier, rescuing a child in Baghdad. The rest of the class, without ever seeing the image, accurately guessed the race of the soldier and the gender of the child. The students constituted its meaning from their expectations, even in the absence of the photograph. They then analyzed how it recalled memories of 9/11. It showed us how we make the world through something as innocuous as glancing at a photograph, and why thinking matters. Regardless of who has the power to make images, we all make meaning each time we look at them. When you observe the worlds that we live in and the worlds that make UW carefully, you will notice that it is made up of not just faculty and undergraduate students, but graduate students and staff. They are some of the most worldly thinking selves at this university. Our own Department of Women's Studies would not run with such efficiency and, more importantly, such good cheer without our administrator, Carol Langdon. She makes sure that our faculty and students get all the resources they need, classrooms with low podiums, and organizes all our student celebrations. Chatting with our custodian the other day taught me a great deal about the Eritrean War of Independence and how we had both watched the same classic Hindi movies growing up. All around you are cafeteria servers, cooks, and gardeners who you can learn from observing and talking to, but whose labors tend to be invisible. This is also true of undergraduate advisors, health and counseling workers, staff in the Office of Minority Affairs, and in the libraries. Don't just turn to them when you need help. Do that for sure. Be sure to talk to them, learn from them, and think about it. Finally, let me take a minute to address the parents and loved ones in this audience. For you who think the world of your kids, who want them to succeed in the world as we do, and who will wonder many times in the next 4 years what in the world has gotten into them, some personal rumination. Yesterday, I found myself on the phone with 2 other mothers commiserating about our empty nests. One told me how she, forgetful of the fact that her son was now in college, had cooked a pound of pasta, which she found herself eating for many days. The other mother told me that she was for the most part really busy and had a full life, but still experienced occasional pangs of emptiness. It was just so quiet with the last of her 3 daughters gone. She described it as a sort of grieving for a part of our lives as parents that we've now lived out. I find I have to stop myself and my husband from expecting that every phone call is from our son and resisting the temptation to call, particularly on weekend evenings, which I'm told is strictly prohibited. I can't help but think that we're in a strange place, overly involved till they go off to college, but now accused of being helicopter parents. Our desire to hover a problem for college administrators and our kids. Unfortunately, I don't have advice on the situation. I can only tell you, cook less pasta, turn up the music, and stop waiting for them to call. With that, let me wish you students all the very best. Be worldly selves now, and remember, thinking matters. Once again, Lugweetseed Chud, Al University of Washington. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Ramamurthy. I think you can see why she was elected Teacher of the Year. I would, indeed, thank you. I would also like you to please join me in thanking Professor Timothy Saltzman and our student wind ensemble for their wonderful music coming in and as we leave. Thank you all. Thank you for your attendance at this wonderful event. We have now nearly completed this formal ceremony, which means it's almost time for you to pack up and go home, parents. Sit and wait for the phone to ring. I hate to disagree with Professor Ramamurthy. It is not prohibited to call on a weekend evening. It's just unlikely to be successful, is all. We are absolutely delighted that you're here. Students, we are so pleased that you've chosen the University of Washington. We commit to you to do everything we can to make this the best educational experience you can possibly have. One last time, welcome to the University of Washington.
The University Alumni Association invites parents, students, and other guests to enjoy complimentary refreshments in the West Concourse, which is right upstairs. The audience is requested to remain seated until the completion of the recession by the platform party. The 2005 Freshman Convocation at the University of Washington is now closed.